The following program may contain coarse language, sexual content, violence, and mature themes, so if you're under 18, back away from the television. Not for you, buddy. Viewer discretion is advised.
Izuku woke up within his own room the next morning ere the sports festival. He had managed to sleep enough in order to attempt to meditate in order to gain further knowledge as well as control over his newfound quirk. He had been training ruthlessly in order to master his movements with the new quirk, as he noticed how his body slightly glowed whenever he used the quirk itself, and worked hard on making sure that the glow couldn't be seen. With the few days he had before school started, so that the next 2 years above him could have their own sports festivals, Izuku spent most of his time image training with himself in a mental training room within his mind. Through meditation, he found that he was capable of gaining so much control that he could make himself seem like he was charging his power like one of the characters from that old show from the 1990s. He found this out when he was training outside of his apartment complex, when his mother heard him grunting in eort as well as growling loudly outside their window to their apartment, and saw his energy flowing around himself just before he was going to head to school, so that he could figure out what kind of hero would like to train him in both their ways of fighting as well as patrols. He noticed a new ability with his quirk. He could sense the power of allies and enemies. This would allow him to gauge the strength of the people he fought as well as trained with in order to allow them to get stronger. When he realized this, he kept that information to himself, since he didn't want anyone to know that he was sensing their energy in order to gauge them as a villain or hero. Izuku arrived at school about 15 minutes ere he left home, and making that realization about his power, he sat down in his seat as he paid attention to the conversations around him when Katsuki sat down in front of him as he questioned him. "What the hell was that power you used in the final event of the sports fest?" he whispered to him angrily. "I don't know, but it seems I'm not as quirkless as we thought," Izuku mumbled back, as Izuku entered the room. "It seems like you are learning. But that is beside the point. Because you all are going to need to choose your hero names, and since I can't teach you this," Izuku said, as the door was slammed open, revealing their modern art hero. "Teacher, I am here to teach you what names to choose for your hero names. As soon as that is done, I will hand over Eraserhead's class back to him," Midnight said, as she smiled lustfully at the class. Almost as soon as she said that, she gave out everyone a Sharpie pen as well as a whiteboard in order to come up with names that they could use as their hero names. Izuku wrote his down almost immediately, which definitely caught Midnight's attention as the woman looked over at him with a smile. It seems like Midoriya had chosen his name for heroism. "Can you tell the class what name you are choosing?" Midnight asked, as she smiled at him. Izuku moved to the podium at the front of the class as he thought about what he will say to build up to the name he chose for himself. "All my life I was told that being quirkless won't allow me to become a hero through hard work and dedication. I was also beaten senseless for believing that I could become one without one, and I was really close to it as well. So, to honor my quirk for being there lightning fast for me, I decided to give myself the hero name of Reikari," Izuku said, as Midnight looked at him confused. "You named yourself ere a move from Naruto," Kaminari called out. "What show is that?" I said. "Reikari." Not whatever you were thinking. Izuku said, as Kaminari pulled out a manga that showed the name he was using but with different wording. You are stealing the name of a fictional character's attack. How can you not know about that? Kaminari said, as he stared at him intensely. I didn't know that N name existed. B, but if it makes you feel better. It's spelled differently. Izuku said, mumbling that last part. Kaminari sat down as he sighed in slight anger and disappointment, and Izuku returned to his seat as he thought about names for his class. Bakugo had tried to go with Explosion Murder God, but that was turned down. Tsuyu went with Rainy Season, Froppy and was accepted. Eureka went with the Space Heroine, Eurovite, Momo went with Creatai, Siro went with Tape Man, Shoji went with Tentacle, Mineta went with Grape Juice, Katsuki came back with Explosion Lord Murder, but was denied again. Mina came up with Alien Queen, but was promptly denied for copyright reasons, as well as it sounds like a villainess's name. Tokoyami went with Tsukuyomi, the god of the moon. From Japanese folklore, Sato went with Sugarman, Aoyama went with Can't Stop Twinkling, mainly because his original one had an I in there and would have been a sentence. Itza and Shoto went with their own names as they were unsure of what to give themselves as hero names. Although when it came to one of the duo, Itza was acting weird since he was abnormally distant with the class as he was completely covered in an angered aura from what Izuku could tell based on his energy reading. Now that you have chosen your hero names, I can give you these, Izawa said, as he showed everyone their names on a list of heroes who asked for them to join their agencies for internships. Izuku looked over the number of people asking for Katsuki as well as Shoto and found that more of the heroes wanted them to join their agencies. A few of them in the higher ranks of the hero charts, but he soon found himself near the absolute bottom of the cake of them with a mere one hero agency who wished to teach him. Wow, these numbers are completely reversed. Shoto has the most and Bakugo was dead last in the battle royale, and he still got more requests than Izuku, Eureka said, as she bounced in her seat. Well, here are the papers for you all to read for your potential hero teachers in how to be a well hero, Izawa said, passing out the papers to his students. As soon as that was done, he slipped under his desk as he went to take a nap since his class were too much of a problem to control. Luckily for him, the class ended, and lunch was starting. Izuku sat in his seat at the lunch table, gaining the courage to sit down with the girls, who for some reason stated that he was an honorary girl. Unknown to them though, he was going through a midlife crisis as he was stuck between Momo and Eureka, who were both leaning more towards his body. Hey, what hero asked for you, Mina? Asked one of the girls. I got some random hero whose name I can't remember, Kyoka said, as she revealed a man with caution lines around his wrists. That's Death Arms. He is a strength-type hero who specializes in crowd control as well as falling buildings by standing in the way of the support beams holding up buildings, preventing them from collapse, Izuku said, gushing about heroes. Another few minutes of talking about heroes. Some of the girls stared at him in disbelief as they asked him for ideas for which heroes would be best for them, which then turned into an interrogation about their quirks as well as their fighting styles in order to define which student was better in terms of fighting than others, as well as discovering which hero was the perfect one for them. Well, I for one believe that Uwabumi was the one for me, Momo said, as she stared at the paper. Are you sure about that? Izuku asked, causing the girl to do a spit take at how he looked at her with genuine concern. What do you mean? Momo asked, seriously confused. Uwabumi mainly concerns herself with the press as well as promoting certain products for her team. She barely does any hero work as she is too busy making herself famous, Izuku said, as Momo looked at him. Why wouldn't she want me for my skills as well as repertoire? She asked, as Izuku gave her a hard look of deadpanning. Momo, Uwabumi only saw you for your body as well as the fact that you look absolutely beautiful. She will only wish to increase the fame you already have, Izuku said, as Momo looked concerned. Who would be better for me in your opinion? Then she asked a little mead. Fat Gum would be perfect for you, since he eats a lot in order to keep up his fat stores that increases his defense. But you would learn how to portion your food intake as well as increase the defense and the power behind your quirks usage from him. He would literally be the perfect hero for you to learn under, Izuku said, before adding. If why you got him for a potential internship? Well, at least you're smart with heroes and not with others too, Momo said, as she muttered it out. Well, if you figured out which hero would be perfect for us, who do you have? Mina asked, as she stared at Izuku's only paper. Well, I only got one, Izuku said, as everyone looked at him weirdly. What do you mean you only got one? Internship over, Okako yelled out loud. It's true though, Izuku said, showing her the internship over. Who would be better for me? Okako asked, curiously. Battle hero, Gunhead. He would increase your martial arts. In order to be a better opponent on the field, you need to learn how to defend yourself as well as make sure that you can't be overpowered by an opponent, Izuku said, as Okako nodded her head and signing her name on it. As the bell ringed for the end of lunch, Izuku walked over to the teacher's lounge and found his homeroom teacher about to leave the office as he arrived. Ah, Midoriya. What do you think you're doing here? Izuku asked, as he looked at the papers in his hands. These are from the girls in my class. And mine is in here as well. We've chosen our hero internship hours and I am going with Gunhead with Uraraka-san, Izuku said, as he nodded his head and placed them in the voice of Nizu. Alright, now head back to your class. You have 3 of them over from the day before it's over, Izuku said, as Izuku nodded his head. The day went by faster than he thought it would as Izuku walked home with Uraraka next to him. For some reason she wanted to come over to his house today and he was extremely worried about what she would think about his room. He had taken down most of his All Might memorabilia from when the hero told him he couldn't become a hero all those months ago. He didn't think highly of the hero as much anymore because of his words, but he couldn't help but know that the man meant no ill will from them. As soon as he opened his apartment door, he found his mother sitting on the couch sleeping as a rom-com was on the television. Turning it he picked his mother up from the couch and brought her to the bedroom where she slept in during the day. Is your mother all right? Eureka asked, concerned. Yeah, she just had her final treatment of therapy from the hospital. Izuku said, as she looked at him concerned even more. She has been diagnosed with cancer since the start of the year. And she was going to allow herself to die, and I didn't allow it to happen. I paid for every treatment and now here she is, almost brain dead at the moment, but it all paid off for me. There hasn't been any kind of problems with her memory at the moment. But that is the worst case scenario. Izuku said, unknowingly, rambling about his life situation. Midoriya. I had no idea that you had to go through that. Eureka said, as Izuku snapped out of it. Don't worry about it. Mom is strong. She won't let this take her down. Izuku said, before leading the young girl to his room. Be careful. It's filled with hero memorabilia. Izuku said, as they entered the room. Okako looked about the room and couldn't help but giggle a little as she saw some All Might posters still hung over the walls, as well as tall glass vases of hero action figures. So you basically have a shrine dedicated to heroes in your room, she asked, as Izuku's face became crimson. Why yeah, but enough about me. What did you want to do here? Izuku asked, a little worried. Don't worry, Izuku. We are going to do some homework. Okako said, smirking at him. Get your head out of the gutter. I am a Christian writer, damn it. JK. A few hours later, both students were laying on the bed holding their heads in pain as they talked about the homework they had to do. I can't believe that ectoplasm had us do so much math homework. My brain feels like it's turning into goo. Eureka whined on Izuku's bed. Said boy was underneath her as she laid on top of him as his heart was beating as fast as possible, but on the outside was as calm as can be. I know, and I can't help but think that Cementos was more encouraging of the homework things since he gave me almost an entire unit's worth of homework. Izuku said, as Eureka looked him in the eyes. Why? She asked, concerned. I may or may not be a few units ahead of everyone else. Izuku mumbled near her ear from where she was laying on him. As Eureka got of him, a part of Izuku wanted her to stay, but he didn't voice it. That was until Eureka looked at him. What did you say? She asked, as Izuku realized that he mumbled it out loud. And nothing. Izuku said, looking away with a red face. Okako moved closer to him as she smiled slightly evilly at him. Did you ask me to stay on top of you? Didn't peg you for a bottom, Midoriya, Okako said, giggling a little. Her actions caused Izuku's head to start to steam from the teasing until when she was near his bedroom door, he held her wrist in his hand. She stopped what she was doing, her heart racing as she looked back at Izuku as the boy was weirdly breathing slightly heavier than before. See, can you spend the night? I would rather not be alone. Izuku said, looking away. He's like a young schoolgirl. Okako screamed mentally at his shy nature. Sure. Where should I sleep though? Okako asked, as Izuku pulled out a futon for the floor. I can sleep on the floor. You can have the bed. Izuku said, as he was looking away. Okako sat on his bed as they continued to talk about the internships that they were going to go to the next morning. Did you Notice something about Itsu-san today, Yurika-san, Izuku asked her, concerned. What about him, she asked, confused. I heard about his brother on the internet earlier today. And he seems to have an angry aura around him. It feels as if he is focusing all his energy on getting revenge for his brother. Izuku said, as he looked worriedly at her. Don't worry about him, he will be fine. Okako said, as they turned in for the night. In the hospital within the city of Hosu, we find Itsu standing behind a glass window as he stares at his older brother within the bed. No matter what, Tensei, I will avenge your hero name. I will not allow Stain to get away with nearly killing you. Tinya said, as he gave the reader an extremely close look at his fury-like smirk on his face. He looked down at his paper for an internship with Pro Hero Manual. The place of where he worked showed Hosu. Izuku was on his way back to school today since he was preparing to head out for his internship with Okako in order to learn how to be a better fighter. He hadn't learned much from the current person teaching him fighting styles, and they were just leaving him to learn from the book they gave him instead of showing him the moves he needed to learn. As he arrived in his classroom with his hero suit in a case, he saw that Itsu's face was showing more emotion than it had just a few days prior, and the main emotion he was seeing was rage. So being the kind person that he was, Izuku moved closer to the boy in order to make sure that he doesn't make a mistake that could cost him his life. Itsu-san, I know what you are planning, Izuku said, as he thought about the attack on Ingenium from Stain. The young man turned around so fast it was like whiplash, and when he saw the meek and timid Izuku looking at him determined, he relaxed a bit with confusion. I don't know what you mean, Midoriya-kun. I am going to learn from a very well-respected hero, Itsu said, as Izuku shook his head. I can see revenge and rage on a person's face just from a single look. I know that your plan in terms of heading over to Hosu with Manual is just to find and defeat Stain for revenge. I know that we don't talk much around here, and I really want to have a friend who is the opposite gender of the girls that hang out with me. Can you at least make sure to inform us that you are going to attack the hero killer when it happens? Izuku asked, as Itsu looked at him in shock. I can't guarantee if I will be able to message you all, but should I have enough time to stop the hero killer from taking another hero's life, I will message the group chat, Itsu said, as he walked to his seat. Izuku stood there flabbergasted as he had no idea what he was talking about. What in the world is a group chat? Izuku thought to himself as he sat down in his seat. Soon enough the class arrived in the classroom, and they awaited their homeroom teacher in order to go to their internships. Not long ere waiting for their teacher, he made his arrival in his traditional sleeping bag as he moved towards the podium. Like the caterpillar he was. Thank you all for coming here today. I am just making sure that you all are here to make sure you learn from the heroes you are going to intern under. You will be doing everything they say as well as use the experience they have in order to become a better hero yourself in the future. You can use any and all skills you have here in order to become a hero of your own. Let's go. You all have a very long week to go before you all start on your finals, Izawa said, as he moved towards the door. Walking this time. Standing near Okako, Izuku saw their teacher staring at the Hosu train. And Izuku made his way over to the teacher. "What do you need?" Midoriya, the man asked, as Izuku startled a little. I just wanted to inform you about Iitsu-san's mission in Hosu. Izuku stuttered out. "What is it this time?" the man asked. He's going to fight the hero killer," Izuku said, as Izuku stared at him. "You've got to be kidding me." The man groaned out a sigh. Please. If you are going there to stop him, make sure that he at least follows my advice to him," Izuku said, as the man looked at him. "What advice would that be?" the teacher asked. I told him to message us before attacking the hero killer. If he doesn't, that means he didn't listen, but if he stops to send out the message, he might be able to be brought back to the path of heroism," Izuku said, as Izuku stared at his kid. "This kid, always worrying about others. Keep yourself safe, kid. I will keep your friend safe as well. Especially from the hero killer," Izuku said, getting on the train to Hosu as well. But not before sending a message to Nizu about a potential Rouge student going a high-profile target. Izuku made it back to Okako to see that some guys were harassing her, as well as making her uncomfortable. "Ah, come on babe. We can show you a great time if you let us take you," one of the faceless men said, as they tried to grope her ass. "Hey!" Izuku yelled as he was close. When the man looked over at Izuku, he looked a bit startled, since he looked similar to a man he hadn't seen in a long time. But that mirage of the man disappeared, and the man became fearful. "Shit man, I didn't know," he returned. The man said, as he ran into the distance. For Okako, she had no idea how to say how much her heart skipped a beat when Izuku came running with a new emotion on his face. But something caught her attention. His face. Was he feeling jealous? That couldn't be possible. He was the kindest person she knew, so the fact that he was blushing somewhat as well as placed his arm around her in a protective manner caused her heart to skip a beat, and a heat went up her cheeks. Getting on the train, Izuku placed her in front of himself as he stood behind her, protecting her from the other men on it. The look on his face showed everything she needed to know. He had seen this happen to too many girls, and he wished for something bad to happen to him instead of the girls. Eventually the train stopped at their destination before any men like that could attack Okako and Izuku. They got and made their way towards Battle Hero Gunhead's agency in order to learn from him. As soon as they knocked on the door, they found a man with a weird helmet on his face as well as 4 holes on it. "Hello students. How can I help you today?" the man asked. "We are here to see if Gunhead is present. We were his interns coming in to learn from him for the week," Okako said, as Izuku was about to release his inner fanboy. The man in front of them chuckled at his starry-eyed look, as Okako soon noticed his face from the peripheral eyesight. "Well, you're in luck, since I am Gunhead. Welcome to my dojo as well as agency. I will make sure to teach you all I can in order to make sure you last out there as hero and heroine. I don't get many students to learn my martial arts, but I hope to get some work studies soon," the man said, letting them in. Walking through the doors they found the floor was basically tatami. Mats galore and they were everywhere. The gunhead agency looked like a traditional dojo where a teacher teaches his students how to fight, as well as become great martial artists. He took them to his ois in order to get them registered for their week of internships, as they talked about what they wished to learn about. So what do you all wish to learn from me? The hero asked. Well, I want to have a fighting style to correspond with my quirk. I named it aptly Ki Energy. I can charge it on the outside to make it seem like I am getting stronger, when I am just putting up an intimidation display. Izuku said, as the man nodded his head. With quirks like yours, you have to have a fighting style since you will need to fight at close range. But with your quirk you can just as easily be a long-range attacker. What about you, Ms. Urarika? The hero asked the girl. It is my dream to be a rescue hero like the space heroine 13. But when I saw how defenseless she was against one of the lineage of villains, I knew that I needed a way to defend myself. Should I get close to one of them? My quirk allows me to negate the gravity of my opponent and take it away, until I can't hold them in the air anymore. The limit is 3 tons, but with the USJ attack, I need to learn how to fight so I can save both heroes and villains. Okako said, as the hero nodded his head. A noble goal. From what I see you will learn everything I can teach you in terms of fighting during this internship. We won't be going out on patrols. I have a feeling that you aren't ready for that just yet, so I will leave that for the work studies. Should you come back to me for them, I will take you both out on patrol for the weekend. We will do martial arts improvement when we return. But for now, let's have a rest day before training for multiple hours for the rest of the week. The hero said, as Izuku nodded his head. The next morning Izuku and Okako awoke from their sleep in their respective rooms, since Gunhead wanted them apart so that they don't get too attached to one another. Returning to the dojo, they find their new master standing on the tatami mats looking at them with a determined helmet expression. Did you change your mask to a determined look? Izuku asked, groggily. Training begins now, he called out, causing both to dodge away from his first attack. You were ready, the hero said, before continuing their fighting until lunch. Around lunchtime was when they were called for training since Gunhead was needed for a villain attack somewhere down the street. So Izuku and Okako had gotten a reprieve from the fighting and had something to eat, sitting next to one another close enough that their hands were touching. Blushing a bit, Izuku looked at Okako as she was eating, and a thought occurred to him. The way she looks with the sun glaring over her shoulder makes her look beautiful. Izuku thought to himself, before noticing Okako blushing and looking at him. Why you find me be beautiful? Okako asked as she stared at him. I mumbled that out loud, didn't I? Izuku asked, before going into a slight mental breakdown. You mumbled it out a little, but I only caught the end of it. But thank you for the compliment, Okako mumbled out. Once they were complete with their lunch, they went over the katas that Gunhead told them to go over in order to become better fighters. When Gunhead returned, he found both kids fighting it out in the dojo, with the most determined looks on their faces as they used his form near perfectly. Kids these days learn so fast. He thought as his helmet. Blushed. But as soon as his feet stepped onto the mat, he found Izuku. Flinched horribly and jumped out of the way. Huh, that's odd, why did he flinch when I made my presence known? The hero thought to himself and soon found the reason why. The young man had been training without a shirt and was seemingly self-conscious about it, and Okako was staring like a child who got caught with a cookie from the cookie jar. Gee, gunhead sir. When did you return? She stuttered out. If I had known that you both were going that far in your relationship, I would have stayed out longer. The hero chuckled at Izuku's whine of embarrassment. Never lose that adorable factor, kids. Never lose it. He thought to himself once more before pulling them in for another lesson. Itsu's internship was going perfectly fine as he was learning from manual about being a hero in Hosu. But he laid out some ground rules for the boy, since he knew exactly why the boy chose him out of multiple heroes who asked for him who were far better. Look kid, I know that you're looking for Stain. But you are going to get yourself killed at this rate if you continue, but if you wish to still learn from me, you have to listen to my rules. Rule 1, absolutely do not go air the hero killer. If you go air him, I will be placed under investigation for the death of you, and I am not willing to go bankrupt or lose my license for a kid who can't get revenge out of his head. I may be a hero, but that is where I draw the line. Rule 2, you need to relax your mind and body a bit in order to be more fluid in your motions. I saw that you need to relax since your quirk requires speed and you can't make turns without slowing down to a lower gear. During this internship I will loosen your mind and body in order to increase your chances of turning sharper turns without having to stop. Rule 3, should you disregard both rules 1 and 2, I will make sure that you are sent back to UA without an internship and have Izuku place you in remedial classes during the final exams. Am I understood? Manuel asked, as Itsu nodded his head. Good, we will begin our training in the morning. I just need to let you know that we are in a crime fanatic city and I will be authorizing you to be capable of using your quirk to protect civilians. Not go and find villains on your own. That is how you get killed. Got it? Manuel said, as Itsu nodded his head. Say it with words, I don't hear a yes or no. Manuel said, as Itsu spoke. Yes sir. I will do my best in order to live up to your expectations. Itsu said, as Manuel gained a so expression. What did I say about loosening up? The hero asked, as Itsu loosened his shoulders. Sorry, I have been trained since a young age to follow the rules. Itsu said, as Manuel chuckled. We all are, just some more so than others. Manuel said, as they walked down the stairs to be given a tour. Izuku and Okako were training inside the dojo of the hero gunhead. They had been taught a lot of martial arts as they were fighting with the skills they learned from the hero. Punch and kick were sent at the other as they tried to get an advantage over the other, with gunhead. Watching from afar, it was like a dance between two dancers trying to one-up the other. The fighting came to a stalemate when both jumped back as Izuku stood straight as he stared at his opponent. Okako did the same, as she was thinking about how to take down a defensive juggernaut like Izuku. With his extremely high pain tolerance, he could take anything she could dish out. It was here that she gained an idea. That could earn her the win, and as she went for a straight frontal assault, Izuku moved faster than she could notice as just when he appeared in front of her, she winked at him. Unknown to her, Izuku's brain calculated every outcome that would come from that move from her. And Izuku's own body had malfunctioned, causing him slight arousal. Forcing himself to pause, bringing her the chance to pin the boy to the ground. And with a slam onto the mat, Izuku was on his back with Okako above him, holding his legs in the air and his arms above his head. As he regained his mentality, he looked into her eyes as he struggled to get out of her hold, but she had a surprisingly strong grip. It was then that he noticed the position that he was in, as Okako seemingly had no idea about it, as his face erupted into a massive blush. As he tapped out, standing up, air getting of him, Okako smiled at him as she smugly told him that she was now in the lead of beating him in a fight. You only won because of that wink, Izuku muttered to himself, as he walked to sit down near their hero teacher. That was a beautiful fight. I can't believe that you defeated him by placing him in that position though. If you really wanted to get him in bed that much, you should have asked him, Gunhead said, as Izuku blushed crimson as Okako took a second to think about it. Oh well, it happened. We can forget it happened later. Right, Izuku? Okako asked, as she looked at Izuku, whose face was boiling from the comment. It felt nice, Izuku said, as Okako sputtered at that. Why, you liked being in that position? She called out, coughing. Izuku looked away as he nodded his head, as Okako thought to herself as an epiphany arose. Izuku might be a slight masochist. They were sitting in the kitchen of the agency as they waited for Gunhead to tell them what else they will be doing for the day. They had a few more hours of the day before they had to go to bed, and it was here that Gunhead made his presence known to the two unknown lovebirds. Hello students. I am going to place my trust in you for today, Gunhead said, as Izuku looked over at the man. What is it? Gunhead Sir, Okako asked. We are going to go out for patrol in Hosu today. I hope you both can stay near me so that I can teach you about how it is supposed to go for a patrol, Gunhead said, as Izuku plus Okako nodded. If you asked Izuku and Okako that going out in their hero costumes during the late evening in Hosu was going to end up with an exploding city, they would probably believe you. What they have seen way worse things in the world than an exploding city on an internship. It probably happens every year when first years go on an internship. But if you told them that there would be no Mua creatures from their worst nightmares attacking the city, then you would be told to please kindly leave them alone. Because Izuku and Okako were locked into combat with a black-skinned Nomu as their hero teacher was fighting another one as he was assisting the civilians escape the area. Izuku's power couldn't do much against the Nomu since it had a massively high defense, and Okako taking away its weight only made it more dangerous since it could increase its already sluggish pace to damn near Izuku's pace within seconds. Okako had been kicked into a building as Izuku had been protecting a child from the Nomu's attack, and he was now forced to fight the Nomu all on his own whilst holding a child on his back. Just when the Nomu had knocked him on the ground, the child screamed for him to get up when a massive torrent of flames destroyed the brain of the Nomu, causing it to collapse to the ground. Nomu is here as well, damn it. Shoto, we need to go help the civilians. A group voice said, as Izuku stood up. Endeavor-san, Izuku asked, standing. Back up. What is a UA student doing in this chaos? Are you acting as a vigilante? The number 2 hero asked. And no. Me Okako and our hero. Teacher, we are doing an internship with came here for a patrol. Gunhead-san is fighting another Nomu on the other side of the block. Izuku said, as Endeavor nodded his head and moved to help. See you later, Midoriya. Shoto said, as he ran. Soon ere the fight with the Nomu, Izuku helped the child his back and brought them back to their parents as they had a reunion, as he found Okako helping some other children find their parents. Oka Urabite? Izuku called out, gaining the girl's attention. Reikari. What happened when I got separated from you? Okako asked, as she ran over. I fought the Nomu on my own. Just as I was about to be killed. Endeavor showed up with Shoto. They are going to help Gunhead-san with the Nomu he is currently fighting. Izuku said, as Okako nodded her head. We should probably look around for more survivors. Okako said, as they moved about the streets and ran across a scene that looked like a horror movie. The hero killer Stain was standing over their classmate Itza with his sword raised high as he was about to land a killing blow to their classmate. Izuku moved forwards as Okako pulled out her phone to see if Itza followed his instructions. Only to see that there wasn't a message to anyone. Sending out a distress signal to everyone in the area including heroes, she added hero killer to the text as she went to assist Izuku in his fight. With Izuku he managed to kick the hero killer of Itza as the man jumped back and reeled from the kick. That was a good form for a kick. What is your name? Are you a younger hero? The hero killer asked. My name is Reikari. And I am here to stop you from killing any more heroes. At the same time, I am here to stop you from killing one of my friends and this hero. Izuku said, as he released his quirk. You might be a true hero yet. Fight me and we shall see your convictions. The hero killer said, as he pointed his blade at the boy. Launching at each other, Izuku flared his quirk as it looked like he was powering up, thinking that this was his K to attack. Stain ran towards Izuku with surprising speed to cut the boy. Izuku dodged to the right as the blade missed his face by a mere centimeter and cut some strands of hair. Izuku released a blast of energy into the hero killer's direction as the killer moved back from the boy in order to gain some distance. It was here that Izuku pressed for the advantage since the hero killer was going on the defensive, and as Izuku was about to attack, Okako had caught up with him and was right behind him as he caused the hero killer to move in her direction. Once she placed 5 fingers on the man's back, he felt his weight disappear as Izuku appeared in front of him and slammed a kick into the hero killer's gut, sending him to the ground. What are you two doing here? This is my fight? Itza called out, as Izuku looked at Itza. Heroes are supposed to meddle when they aren't needed. True heroes help those even if they don't wish to be helped. Izuku said, as Stain stopped moving from his position in the air. That is it. You are a true hero. I will spare you in order to make sure that you are cultivated into a pure true hero. What about you, woman hero? Killer Stain asked. I only want to help people, but at the same time, my parents and I come from a poor background. I want to make sure that they can live a comfortable life. Okako said, as Stain looked at her. So long as your wish to save people remains pure, you are a hero. But not the truest form of one, you will be spared as well. Stain said, as he looked over at the boy on the ground. Please just leave me alone. I am here to stop Stain myself. Izuku called out. That boy though, he is no hero. He came here to end my life, as revenge for me taking down the fake hero Ingenium. Stain said, as Izuku spoke up. Ingenium what? Are you talking about? Ingenium is one of the best heroes out there. With his speed he was capable of saving people and has only cared for them. Izuku said, as Stain looked at him. That is incorrect, he let an innocent family die when he fought the villainous explosion freak. Stain said, as Izuku spoke up again. Didn't you see how devastated he was? Ere that fight? Izuku asked, as Stain gave him a confused look. Ingenium was devastated that he couldn't save that family in time. He was always a hero for the people, but when placed in front of a villain, surrounded by civilians, who would you rather sacrifice, the many or the little? Izuku asked, as Stain looked at him. Watch your words, boy, you might make me change my mind about your status as a true hero. Stain warned. Who are you basing your opinion of a true hero on? Izuku asked. All Might. He is the one true hero in this world. He saves people and only wishes for a smile to be given back. Hell, he doesn't wish for anything to be given back by the civilians. Stain said, as Izuku spoke again. All Might made his form of heroism of a true hero, but there is a lot of things wrong with his line of thinking. Because of his form of heroism, many people believe that in this society you need fame, money as well as status in order to become a hero. But that isn't the case. While I agree with your ideals a little bit, going as far as killing heroes because of the fact that they don't save people for them. What about the heroes' lives? What if the hero is doing it because he couldn't do anything else and needs to live? Izuku asked, as Stain looked at him. You have given me a lot to think about, boy, but even so, hero has lost its title. It wasn't meant to be a job given out to the many. It was a title that was earned by doing good for others, without wishing for a reward. Stain said, as Izuku nodded his head. But even so, maybe we need an incentive in order to keep people safe. Some heroes out there only protect the people because of the fact that they need the money to survive. Izuku said, as Stain further had an introspection on his ideals. It was here that Izuku made his move to attack Stain as the killer was distracted. As the duo continued their fighting against the hero killer, a new person arrived in their location and blasted the villain from behind. As soon as Izuku and Okako looked behind the hero killer, they found out that it was Endeavor and Shoto. Hero killer, your reign is now over, Endeavor said, as he slowly moved towards the murderer. Damn, I don't have enough strength to fight him. Not only that, but I am nearly spent. Stain muttered underneath his breath. Just as he was about to throw a smoke bomb on the ground to escape, Izuku kicked him towards the hero as Endeavor slammed a fist into the villain's face, knocking him out. Looking at the killer now, he was a mere man who had an impressive pain tolerance and Endeavor could respect a man who could withstand his blows. All right children, we will be talking about why you are here, but as of right now, we need to talk to the police about what happened here. Endeavor said, as everyone nodded their heads. Izuku and Okako arrived in the main area where they soon found Gunhead looking all over for them. Gunhead! Izuku called out, gaining the hero's attention as he ran over. Oh, thank God. I didn't want to lose any students from UA. What happened? The man demanded as Izuku and Okako gave him a rundown of what happened. I see, from what I can tell, Pro-Hero Native had been rising up in the ranks recently. He probably had been gaining fans from his rise of power. Thank you all for preventing his death. I hope that you can continue your internship this event. Gunhead said, as they got onto the ambulance and headed to the hospital. It wasn't long before they were sitting in a room with Shoto and Itza as they waited for the police chief and their respective heroes. Within a few minutes Itza apologized for what he told Izuku and Okako in the alley as Izuku shrugged it as that was what a hero was supposed to do. It was here that the reason why Itza couldn't contact them all was because of the fact that he had to enter the fray before Native could be neutralized by the hero killer. And that during his fight with the hero killer the man had destroyed his phone and had kicked it away from him. Not long ere Itza's explanation, the police chief of Hosu arrived in the room as he looked at the kids. I know that you are all here to talk about what happened in Hosu, but I would like to say that if you do this again, I will be forced to arrest the three of you on accusations of vigilantism. The boy and girl are on the hook since they had their internship hero's permission to use their quirk. Meanwhile you had ran away from your internship hero and went to fight a killer who was known to kill many heroes. About 32 to be exact. The chief said, as Itza became really self-conscious. But not to worry, so long as the collection of the hero killer goes to Endeavor then you all will be safe from the law. But make sure that this doesn't happen again. The chief said, as he left the room. As soon as Itza was left alone, they all got a message from Nizu stating that the internships for this year were going to be pulled about a few days earlier than normal because of the attack on Hosu. Izuku and Okako arrived back at the agency of Gunhead as they talked about what had happened in the city. I'm sorry that you all were not allowed to continue your internships. I just wish I was able to teach you all more about my moves as well as patrols. Should you join my agency for work studies further on in the year, ere you get your provisional licenses, you could come back here for more learning. Gunhead asked, as Izuku said he'd think about it and Okako said the same. They entered their respective rooms as they collected their clothes as well as items they brought on the journey and put them in their backpacks and headed out. Saying their goodbyes to Gunhead and that they wish him well, they arrived at the train station as they talked about what they will expect from their teachers this time. As they rode the train back to Musudafu, Okako talked about how she wanted to become a hero to give her family a lavish life. Izuku agreed with her sentiment as he told her that his dream was to save people no matter what happened. He was just that kind of a person to just wish to help Others, no matter what happens to himself, he would even martyr himself in order to help at least one person. They arrived at their stop as Izuku walked the girl home, saying goodbye. Izuku walked back home. He was preparing for when he would have to talk to his mother about what happened in Hosu when he saw that the house was empty once again. Sigh, it's always like this. The one time I want to be around her. She isn't even home. Izuku said to himself. He never really noticed how he had multiple phone calls on his phone that were pushed to voicemail. But the most disturbing fact was that they were all from his mother. Izuku woke up the next morning as he prepared to meditate in order to increase his control with his quirk. He had been making leaps and bounds of control as well as learning new techniques in making himself better at using it. He had learned to spread the power all around his body in order to gain the maximum amount of power needed to use. He also used whatever he learned from the show Dragon Ball Z from the 1990s in order to make attacks of his own with plasma. It was hilarious how the prideful Vegeta named his attacks how he felt sexually, at least it was to Izuku. But besides that, he had finally come up with a new move that increased his power by at least 25x. He called it Emerald Flash. It allowed him to collect his power within his fingers on each hand, as he would point them in the form of a gun and shoot it at his opponents. It was incredibly versatile as it would annihilate the dummies he set up in his backyard. He was about 24 hours away from heading back to school, and he wanted to show his new move to his teacher. He soon looked at his phone in order to see if he had any calls from Okako. When he saw the amount of phone calls from his mother calling her back, he soon heard her phone ringing on the other side, and as soon as it reached its second ring, she answered. Izuku, are you all right? Did you get away from that killer safely? Inko called out from the phone. Izuku had forgotten that his mother was placed in an old person's home because of the Alzheimer's she was experiencing. And there was nothing he could do about it, since the people who told him about it said that it would continue until she eventually became brain dead. He continued talking to his mother about what happened on his internship with Okako, as his mother talked about having grandbabies soon down the line. He wasn't aware of how much time had passed just talking to his mother when he saw that the time was around late at night, and he needed to get some sleep in order to find out what was happening the next day. So, ending the call on a good note, he went to his room and did some quirk notes, as he wanted to catch up on some missed hero quirk notes, and fell asleep. Izuku was on his way to the school the next day. Since he was all alone in his home, he didn't wish to tell his teachers as well as the principal about his living situation, since they might think that there was something wrong with that. A useless Deku shouldn't have to worry others with his problems. He was always alone, so he was fine. Arriving at school, he sat down in his seat as Izawa-sensei talked about what happened during the internships, as he congratulated some students on their actions, whilst he gave Itza a stern warning to not do what he did ever again. The day continued until they reached Hero Informatics class. As Izawa entered the classroom once again. Hello class, I know that you all want to head home soon, so I will be telling you that your final exams will be showing up during this week. I will not be telling you what the practical will be about, just know that it will be as hard as you think. It will be. Izuku said, as he went over what they will be reviewing in the class. Going over what lessons the final exams will be going over on the written test. He took the class outside as he told them about making some new moves in order to let the class know how they have progressed. Izuku stood up to his teacher as the man looked at the boy with a confused look as Izuku asked him a question. "Can I test a skill I learned on you?" Izuku asked, as the man nodded. "You can erase my quirk if it becomes too much to handle, sensei," Izuku said, as he pointed his hands in the direction of Izuku. The class, intrigued about his new move, sat on the ground nearby as they noticed a faint glow of emerald on his fingers moving to their tips. It was here that they all noticed how his fingers began to glow ominously as they were pointed at their teacher. "Are you going to use this new power?" Izuku asked, as he was admittedly amused. "Emerald Flash," Izuku called out, as he pulled his hands into a gun formation as he blasted his teacher many times with the blasts. Izuku, caught off guard, blocked the attack as he was peppered with the blasts hitting his arms and legs. He was surprised with the power of these attacks as they were doing a lot of damage to his arms and legs, and he knew not to take his student lightly. He used his quirk and Izuku's power went down into a small blast, and Izuku was surprised that Izuku's quirk wasn't completely erased. "Are you erasing my quirk?" Izuku asked. "Yes, but why do you still have it?" Izuku asked, concerned. "I don't know, maybe it is a mutation," Izuku asked, as Izuku just shook his head in amusement. The rest of the class went over their super moves as they wanted to show the class that they had moves as well. Overall, the class was doing great and having fun with one another. Izuku used Todoroki's ice in order to have targets in order to get his aim on point as well as make sure he won't miss a moving target. As soon as the class neared its end, Izuku came out and told them that it was time for lunch and that as soon as it was over, they could all head home. Inside the lunchroom, Izuku had himself some katsudon as he really loved the food. He missed his mother would make it every night for him. He couldn't make it since he didn't spend much time with her, and he could follow directions but couldn't make it like his mother did. Izuku was eating his food when Okako and the rest of the girls sat near him, Okako sitting on his right, with Tsuyu sitting on his left. "How was your guys' internship?" Tsuyu asked, as Okako gave the girls a rundown on the internship. Izuku still couldn't bring himself to talk to most of the girls, and they found it okay since he doesn't trust most people, so they didn't want to rush it. Well, if it isn't 1A. I thought you all would have died already," a blonde-haired boy with a villainous attitude said to the group. Izuku looked at the boy and couldn't help but compare him to his old friend Katsuki, who was still on the other side of the room at the moment. "Who are you?" Izuku asked, as innocently as possible since he didn't know who this boy was exactly. "My name is Monoma, and it would be wise to remember it as my class will be the ones to finally usurp the power struggle our classes share each and every year," Monoma said, as he introduced himself. Not that I am against it. But why would I care if you think you're better? I don't mean to seem like I don't care about your pompous attitude, but you really seem like you are all bark and no bite," Izuku said, as some of the girls Started to owe at his burns, even if they were unknown. You really don't care about the rivalry between each of our classes? Monoma asked, confused. I honestly don't care for it. I am just here to become a hero, and I will not allow anything to get in my way. So sorry to burst your bubble about making yourself seem better than us, but have your class faced villains multiple times and lived? Izuku asked, as Monoma stopped his triad and shook his head. Have your group ever trained hard enough to defeat us personally? Izuku asked, as Monoma spoke about his class president. Only one person had trained seriously enough to take on our class? Izuku asked. Well, yes, we don't need skill. In order to defeat your all, we need our quirks only, Monoma said, as Izuku looked at the boy. Well, if you think quirks make the hero, go ahead. I hope someone similar to Stain will take you on your high horse soon. Because the way you're going you will die on the battlefield, Izuku said, sitting down. With Izuku saying his piece, Monoma left the table as he went to think about his life choices of talking to Izuku. Izuku, that was incredibly hot, Tsu said, as she stared at the boy. Izuku became a blushing mess when this was stated as he slammed his face into the table as Okako started fretting over him. Once lunch was over, Izuku was on his way back to class to collect his things when All Might stopped him on his way. Hello Midoriya Shonen. Can I speak with you in my voice? All Might asked. All Might? Sure. Izuku said, as he moved the teacher. Entering the voice of the number one hero was more overwhelming than Izuku thought it would be. He looked at the hero as he sat down on a couch. As they went over what he wanted to talk about, he talked about how he was really looking for a successor and thought he found the one. So, All Might, who is this successor you are talking about? Izuku asked. Well, young man, it's you, All Might said, chuckling. Not to bring down the mood and all, but I was going for an underground hero status, Izuku said, as All Might nodded his head. That's all right, young Midoriya. But what I want to do is give you my quirk. Many people had talked about and debated about what its true name was. All Might started. I know, they had no idea of what it can do. From what I can believe, it was an energy stockpiler, and it grew with. How long you been a hero for? I don't know anything else about it other than that, Izuku said, as All Might sat there looking at him. You know Midoriya Shonen. That was terrifyingly accurate, but you were just about what the true nature of it was. Its name is one for all. All Might coughed, began to speak as he talked about how the power was passed down from user to user, and how he was currently the 8th user of the quirk and was wishing to pass it on down to him. All Might, sir, as much as I would love to accept this quirk, I already have a quirk of my own. And not to sound rude to you, I would rather not take the quirk. If it came with that much baggage, I personally think it came with a supervillain who would be me constantly in order to get it, Izuku said, as All Might smiled at him once more. You don't need to worry about that villain, that is my fight to handle. I just want to pass on the quirk so that it would be in safe hands with you. Rejecting the power It makes me proud that you would want to have someone else take the power. All Might said, as he stared at the boy. All Might, I don't mind being your successor, just I don't want the quirk itself. I have been training in order to become an underground hero all my life. I want to get there on my own power, not anyone else's. Izuku said, staring at the hero. You are already showing your worthiness by just accepting to be my successor in the first place. But just in case, can you hold on to his piece of hair in the event that I face against this villain again? In the event that I am killed by him, I would like you to keep the will of one for all going. I can't allow the villain to stay alive. When I fight him, I will be going for the kill. Once he is killed, he will not be capable of going air anyone else, and if I am able to kill him, one for all will die with me. All Might said, as Izuku thought about it. There wasn't really anything holding him back from keeping his hands on All Might's quirk. Not only that, but in the event of All Might's death, should the hero die on television, someone would need to take up the mantle of symbol of peace. I will hold on to the quirk All Might, and when you eventually die or survive, I will make the decision of whether or not I will give it to someone else or take it myself. Izuku said, as he stared at the hero. That is what I expected of someone who wishes to become a hero, even whilst being quirkless. You kind of made my dreams at a younger age come true, you know. All Might said, as he allowed Izuku to leave. What do you mean, All Might? Izuku asked. I used to be quirkless like you, but unlike you I was completely quirkless. I wasn't misdiagnosed. All Might said, as Izuku left the room to collect his things. Izuku arrived at his home as he got a call from his mother's friend, Mitsuki. Hey Auntie Mitsuki. Izuku said, as Mitsuki talked back to him. Hey Izuku, are you okay living on your own right now? The woman asked. I am a bit lonely here. Should I invite a friend over? Izuku asked, as Mitsuki thought of a girl for Izuku. Well, how about you bring over that Yurika girl? She seems like the type of girl who you'd like to have over. Mitsuki asked, as Izuku thought about it. I will think about it. How has Kiken been? Izuku asked, as Mitsuki let out a growl. The little bastard has been going to anger management classes, but I am glad that it seems to be working for the little asshat. But other than that, he is the same little Kiken that you remember. Mitsuki said, as Izuku hummed. I'll let you go, Auntie Mitsuki. I might come over at some point this week in order to spend some time with your aunt uncle Masaru. Izuku said, as Mitsuki let out a small squeal as she thanked him for this chance. Hanging up, Izuku looked around the place and found it extremely lonely, so he pulled his phone out once more as he called the number that a certain girl gave him. Please don't answer, please don't answer, please don't answer. Izuku held in his breath as he wished that the girl didn't answer. Hey Izuku. How are you today? Okako answered, as Izuku screamed internally. My mom is in an elderly home because of Alzheimer's disease. Could you come over? It's getting really lonely. Izuku said, as he started to slow down his speech as he was close to crying. Sure thing, Izuku. Do you want me to Bring any other girls over, Okako asked. If you want to bring them over. Izuku mumbled into the phone as Okako hummed her happiness as he hung up. I am letting a G girl over. More than J, just one. Multiple. Izuku said aloud to nobody in particular. I should probably get some snacks as well as some food set up for them to arrive. Izuku stuttered out. Okako was on cloud 9, Izuku had finally allowed her to come over to his house. She had been trying to get him to give her a call for the entire first semester of the school year, and he finally did it. This was a celebration to be held. She was going to bring all the girls over, but decided to ultimately bring over Tsuyu since the girl was extremely blunt and wouldn't mind doing anything with the boy. Okako could only hope that Izuku would be fine with what she was going to be planning tonight, because she was about to go era on him. Maybe add Tsuyu into it as well. All will be shown when she arrived. Izuku was pacing around his home as he was thinking about what he had just told Okako. He basically told her that his parents weren't home and that he was alone. Oh God, why did I sound like a young schoolgirl? Izuku asked himself as he paced around his living room. About a few minutes later, a complete mental breakdown, a knock was heard from his front door as he went to open the door. As he opened the door, he saw that Okako wasn't alone as she had brought Tsu with her as well to his home. I know that I said that you could bring people. But why did you bring one? Izuku asked, worriedly. Well, I know that you didn't want to be all alone with me, so I brought Tsu-chan so that we can have alone time with you, Okako said, as she grabbed the boy by the collar of his shirt. Reddening in his face showed that he was becoming more and more embarrassed with his position, and it was here that Okako decided to do something that she thought would calm him down. She placed her lips over his own as she kept her eyes open as she saw how his eyes widened before slowly closing as she returned the favor and deepened the kiss. Their make-out session, Izuku was pushed lightly onto the couch of the living room as Okako and Tsu moved closer to him. As Izuku looked at the girls worryingly, he never noticed something happening to himself. As his pants started to feel a little tight, Okako and Tsu sat on the ground near him as they definitely took notice of how his pants were slowly pitching a tent. Licking their lips, both girls stared into his eyes as he was slowly moving backwards into the couch as each sat on one of his legs, kissing his cheeks. We will be having a lot of fun before school tomorrow. Izuku-kun, please be submissive, Okako said, as Izuku nodded his head fast. Lemon. Okako and Tsuyu took his shirt as they took in the chiseled chest that was covered in scars, ranging from burns to scrapes and tears. They took it in. Leaning downward, they kissed him on his neck as one moved down his neck slowly whilst the other moved faster towards his pants. It was here that Izuku felt his pants pitching their tent, and they were becoming very uncomfortable as he realized what was happening. Are you sure about doing this with me? Izuku asked, concerned. We are definitely sure, Izuku, now just let us take over for this, Okako said, as Tsu pulled his pants down, revealing his surprisingly normal boxers, revealing how big his tent actually was. Licking their lips, they took their clothes and tossed them on the ground as Izuku was given a front-line seat viewing of their naked bodies as they swayed in front of him. He was doing his best to not look completely at their assets, but it was becoming incredibly hard to do so when his lower head was not making it any easier. Pulling his boxers downward, Izuku noticed how they were doing it slowly until they pulled it down suddenly fast. Placing his hands where his throbbing phallus was, he looked away as the girls looked at him with an adorable smile. "You don't have to hide yourself from us, Izuku," Tsuyu said, as she pulled one of his hands away, whilst Okako held the other one. As soon as they pulled his hands away, they got a good look at him as he was blushing madly as he looked away. Please don't look at my phallus like that," Izuku said, looking away. "You do know that this is called a cock, right?" Okako asked. What are you talking about?" Izuku asked as Tsu and Okako looked at one another. "Pure." They both thought to one another. "Well, you know how we call your groin your cock, and you call it a phallus?" Okako asked, as Izuku nodded his head slightly confused. "Well, everything you need to make babies is right in here," Okako said, holding his sack in her hands. Groaning in slight pleasure, Izuku looked at both girls as they smiled at him. I was taught to not do that until I found a girl I liked tremendously," Izuku said, looking anywhere but where they were. He had no idea that sex could be this intoxifying, but he had made it his mission to not be taken in by pleasure. "Oh Izuku, this isn't sex," Okako said, hearing his muttering. "This is only the beginning," Tsu said, as she placed her hand over his phallus. Gasp. Izuku took a deep breath in. As soon as both girls' hands touched his phallus. Have you never touched yourself?" Okako asked, concerned. "And no, and never had a reason for it." Is that bad?" Izuku asked, worried. "No, it's you will be releasing a lot of cum when you are pleasured enough," Okako said, as she smiled at him. Both girls moved their hands up and down his throbbing phallus as they heard his groans as well as a small moan from his mouth. Hearing it was like music to their ears as they moved faster on his phallus as his breathing hitched as they felt his warm phallus throbbing more and heating up. "He's about to release," Tsu said, as she looked to Okako. "Let's see how much he was holding back," Okako said, as they both placed their mouths over his sack. Once that was done, Izuku released everything. Strips of white semen flew in the air over their head and landed in their hair and on their breasts. "Wow, that was a lot." "Didn't think that there was," Tsu said, before another shot of cum landed in her mouth, and the same happened with Okako. Izuku was lying his head on the back of the couch as he tried to not think about what the hell just happened. As the girls recovered from their little excursion against Izuku's cock, he regained some stamina as he looked at the girls slowly consuming his cum. Oh shoot," Izuku said, as the girls looked at him. He was blushing madly as his cock was increasing in size back to full mast as the girls smiled at him. "Wow, he really is a grower. Well, let's get started," Tsu said, as she placed her breasts around his cock as Okako did the same. Rubbing their breasts over his cock was sending massive pleasure strikes up Izuku's nervous system. Having never done this before, his mind was slowly succumbing to the Pleasure that was taking over in the moment as his hips started to buck a little. It was here that Okako placed her hand over his shoulder as he stared at her, in confusion. "You stay there, little boy. Let Oni-chan take over," Okako said, as Izuku nodded his head. Never had he thought that being shorter than all the girls in his class would make him this submissive, but far be it from him to allow his mind to falter. Leaning back into the couch, the girls sped up their menstruations around his cock as his body was racked with pleasure. Eventually he released all over the girls again, as this time, they placed their mouths near the smaller head of his cock. As ropes of semen flew out of his cock, both girls lapped it up as they slowly filled their cheeks with cum. As soon as they lathered his cock in their saliva, both girls looked at one another as they thought about who would go first. "You want to go first, Tsu?" Okako asked, as Tsu shook her head. "I know that you want to be his first time, go ahead. I can wait," Tsu said, as Okako nodded and pulled Izuku to the floor. As soon as Izuku was on his back on the floor, Okako sat above him as his cock was pointed at her entrance as she stared at the boy. "I am so happy that this is happening, Izuku. I hope you are as well. Because you are being updated to becoming a man tonight," Okako said, slamming her hips down onto his own. "Gyuuo." Izuku moaned out, as Okako gasped heavily. He held her hips on his lap as his hands twitched as he felt her sheath completely squeezing his cock as hard as it could. Leaning over his body, Okako started to lee her ass up and let it fall back down slowly as Izuku felt even more pleasure happening. She started to get a rhythm in her movements as she heard Izuku moaning loudly as she smiled at him. She loved how she was giving him enough pleasure to let it be known loudly. Tsu, not wanting to ble out, placed her own entrance above his mouth as she sat down on his face, but not placing all her weight over his head that he would pass out though. As Okako increased her speed as well as Tsu using him as her very own vibrator, they heard his breathing intensify as Okako started to wiggle her ass over his cock until they heard him grunting in massive effort to keep himself from releasing. Tsu got as soon as she felt that he was finished, and both girls were surprised when he leaned upwards and pushed Okako to the ground and started pounding her harder. His eyes were glazed over as he pounded Okako harder and harder, and the girl was liking this version of him. Eventually, Izuku looked at the girl in her eyes and asked her a question. "Where do you want it?" Izuku asked, as Okako let out a gasping moan. "I inside," Okako said, as Izuku increased his pace. As soon as he reached his maximum limit of holding back, he released into her body. Okako breathed happily as she gave a dopey smile on her face as he pulled out slowly. Looking over at Tsu, he gave her a lick of the lips before pouncing on her as they continued for well into the night of their activities. Lemon over. The next morning came by faster than all three students ever thought it could. Izuku woke up on the couch with both girls laying near him or on top of him in terms of Okako. Pulling her closer to his body, he realized something that was wrong with his situation as he looked down and noticed that his phallus was inside her still. Pulling out, he placed her on the bed as he went to the bathroom, He had no recollection of what happened, but he will not question it. He arrived in the kitchen as he started to make breakfast and started to make some toast and some biscuits. As soon as the girls finished their shower, they entered the kitchen as they talked about the night the three had. You know, Izuku, I never thought that you'd be really submissive to us. Tsu said, bluntly. I don't know what you're talking about. Izuku mumbled as he ate his breakfast. Well, we did it, so are we dating or something? Okako asked, as Izuku looked at them. Will you have babies now? Izuku asked, as the girls looked at him blushing. We are on the pill. Okako and Tsu said at the same time. Thank goodness. Didn't wish to become a father at the age of 15. Izuku said, as the girls giggled at him. Don't worry. We have final exams to get to anyway. We wouldn't be that irresponsible. Okako said, smiling. Glad for that, but could we keep it quiet about what happened last night? I don't want people thinking bad things about me. Izuku asked, as the girls nodded their head. Izuku and the girls were in front of their classroom as they opened the door to see everyone sitting in their desks. Okako and Tsu went to their own seats with smug grins on their faces as Izuku sat behind Katsuki. Geez nerd, did you lose your virginity or some shit? Katsuki asked, as he turned to look at the boy. I don't know what you're talking about. Izuku said, hurriedly causing Katsuki to look at the boy's neck. Damn, a hickey, who did it? Katsuki asked. Why are you asking about my sex life? Izuku asked, as Katsuki looked at him. I am sorry about what I did. I know that what I've done in the past is wrong. And before you speak, do not forgive me, I don't deserve it. I've been going to anger management classes since Best Jeanist told me to get it. I realized my mistakes, but I still stand by what I have done. Katsuki said, as Izuku told him how his night went. Well, fuck, didn't know you had it in you. Katsuki said, as Izuku looked at him. I was so embarrassed about it. When they started, I felt like I was a schoolgirl telling her boyfriend that her parents weren't home. Izuku whispered to him. Well, I've always known that you were more feminine than masculine. Maybe those girls will keep your mind out of quirks from now on and keep you looking at them. Katsuki said, as Izuku gained a confused expression. Maybe those girls should become your girlfriends then. Katsuki said, as Izuku looked away as the teacher entered the classroom. All right class, you spent the entirety of last week doing your written exams for the finals in this semester. Today though, you will be doing the practical in your hero informatics class. I will be seeing if you will be gaining a prize for the exams if you all pass. Those who pass will be allowed to enter the summer camp that we will be doing without remedial classes. But those who can't pass the physical exams will have to do them whilst also not having fun during summer camp. Izuku said, as everyone gained smirks. A few hours later, everyone was near Gym Gamma as they were waiting on their teachers for what they should be doing. Izuku was spending this time meditating in order to gain some semblance of more control over his volatile quirk. It was during his meditation that the teachers showed up and talked about how the students would fight them in order to decide whether or not they would be able to go to the summer camp to train their quirks. Teams are the same as Canon. Izuku was meditating. When Katsuki stood next to him as he asked him about what they should look out for on All Might. Alright nerd, what is the plan for taking on All Might? Katsuki asked, causing everyone to look at him. What are you talking about, Katsuki? I thought you hated him, Okako asked, concerned. I'm seeing my problems with him and myself and making an effort to be better. Leave me alone. Katsuki screamed at the class. With the class leaving them alone, Izuku let out a breath as he stood back up looking at Katsuki. We will need to deal as much damage as possible to his LE side. He favors his right side a lot when fighting villains, but the most important thing we will need to do is avoid fighting him at all costs, Kaken. Izuku said, seriously. What do you mean avoid all combat with him? Katsuki yelled. Kaken. We can't win against him. Sure, we can cause enough damage to slow him down, but we can't win against him. He's just too strong. Izuku said, as Katsuki took a deep breath before letting it out. Okay, so how will we fight him? Katsuki asked, as Izuku whispered to him the plan. Okako was having a great time with Aoyama-kun with her exams as she was holding onto a guardrail with him as they tried to find out what to do about 13's quirk. So, you like Midoriya the blonde boy? Asked, as Okako gained a red hue and placing her hands on her face. What? Okako asked, before she felt herself being sucked towards her teacher. Shit. She called out, as she flipped in the air and landed near the teacher, catching them off guard. Landing right behind the teacher, she flipped 13 onto the ground and attached a CU onto the woman's wrist and connected it to her own wrist. Team Aoyama and Okako passed the test. All Might's voice called out. For a good portion of the day, the students fought their teachers as they tried to find a way to defeat them on their own. Momo and Shoto had defeated Izawa-sensei by using his capture weapon against him. Mina and Kaminari had lost against Nizu, who scarred them for life. Shoji and Hagakure had an interesting win against Snipe-sensei. Kota and Jiro managed to jump scare Present Mike with bugs. Sato and Kirishima had lost to Cementos, wanting to have a frontal assault against the hero, Mineta, and Siro had won with Mineta getting over his perversion slightly before asking God why he wasn't allowed to fall to midnight. Everyone had a mix of wins and losses. Mostly wins against their teachers. It was all down to Izuku and Katsuki as they looked at their opponent on the billboard. It was All Might and the #1 hero of the world. You remember the plan, Kaken? Izuku asked as Katsuki nodded his head. I remember, nerd, just stay out of my way so that I can do what I do best. Katsuki said, as Izuku nodded his head. Izuku used his quirk to fly on top of a building in order to meditate a little more so that he could have full control of it for when his part of the plan began. It was here that All Might made his presence known to everyone by punching a blast of air towards Bakugo as the boy dodged the air blast. I am here. And I don't care about collateral damage anymore. All Might called out, laughing. His smile now showed Katsuki why villains always feared him. His smile was really intimidating to him since he was younger, and more inexperienced. All Might looked around before noticing a small white orb on a roof as he laughed harder. To think you thought that you could defeat me. Do you know that I found your ally already? All Might asked, getting into a fighting stance. I will defeat you, All Might. And we will make sure that you don't underestimate us. Katsuki screamed as he blasted his way over to the hero. Locked in combat, Izuku stopped what he was doing as he sensed the power of All Might fighting Bakugo. It was surprising that the bully was nearly as strong in terms of sheer power as All Might, but Izuku thought nothing of it. He knew that the hero was holding back a lot of power in order to make Katsuki think he had a chance. Izuku moved to a blind spot for the hero as he got ready to free fall towards the hero and gain the advantage in terms of passing the test. Jumping over the building, he activated his quirk, and with his ki, he flew faster towards the hero as his eyes flickered between silver and emerald. As All Might heard the whistling of air behind him, he turned just in time to allow both Bakugo and Izuku to land a devastating blow to his injury. Izuku headbutted the hero in his LE kidney whilst Bakugo released an explosion there, as the hero was pushed back far into a building behind themselves. Alright Kikin. Let's get out of here, Izuku said, as the boy nodded his head. The duo ran towards the other end of the arena as they prepared for the next part of their plan. They were going to lure the number one hero into a trap. The moment they were about to pass the line to win the exercise, All Might landed behind them and grabbed the collars of their hero suits and threw them back into the arena. You landed a massive blow to me, but that will not put an end to me. Heroes. All Might called out, smiling even more. Sorry, All Might. But you are the one who will be put to an end, Izuku said, as everyone in the arena and watching the event looked confused. What do you mean, young man? All Might asked, as Izuku looked at the hero. It was here that everyone noticed the slight ball of energy behind Izuku's back as the boy rushed to the hero. As the hero managed to grab the boy, he never noticed how his right hand pointed at his injured LE side as he released the ball of energy. With that blast hitting All Might's LE side, he was sent flipping in the air to the right as Izuku grabbed the unconscious Katsuki and ran across the line. As the buzzer went, All Might looked at the retreating form of Izuku and couldn't help but smile at him. He is far smarter than I gave him credit for. The hero thought to himself before looking at the damage to his LE side. To think that he followed through with his threat. I saw that attack coming a mile away. And he managed to catch me even though I saw it. All Might laughed, as he stood up tall, entering his small Might form. As he looked to the sky, he couldn't help but smile about what the next generation will become. I hope you are watching. Nana, I really hope that you are watching, as the next generation heir me are becoming strong enough to put a powerhouse like me down. The hero laughed. Izuku woke up in his home as he thought about the weekend he had with Okako and Tsuyu. The girls had been more akin to acting like girlfriends whenever he was around, and he hadn't asked them what happened on the weekend was them cementing a relationship yet. He had passed the final exams with Katsuki the other day, and he was happy that he was capable of being able to train his quirk in the quiet of his home during their break before school started up again. They would, however, have to come in near the start of summer break in order to talk about what they will be doing whilst staying at UA. So he was getting himself ready for school since he was preparing for the summer break. At camp with his classmates, he was on his way to school when he saw Eureka and Itza as the two were walking over to him with smiles on their faces. Izuku seen the face on Eureka, and he blushed at how smug it was when she looked at him when he then looked away from her. "Ah, is Izuku scared of me?" she asked, pouting. I am not as scared of you, oh Okako," Izuku said, looking away. "Well, look at me then," she said, as she grabbed his head and forced him to look at her, blushing at her face. And how close it was. He looked away with his eyes as she sighed heavily at his shyness. "We're going to have to work on your shyness when it comes to girls. I mean seriously, you and Tsu had sex with me just last weekend and you are just so shy still." The girl groaned, as Itza looked like he was about to blow a gasket. Sorry, oh Okako," Izuku said, looking at the ground and skewing his shoe on the pavement. "Nope. No apologizing for you. You need to make sure that you can keep your mind on the prize," Okako said, as she smirked at him teasingly. Izuku looked confused at her teasing look before she leaned over to his ear and whispered something in his ear as he became a blushing mess and slammed his face into a concrete wall, breaking it completely. As Izuku recovered from his embarrassment from Okako, the trio made it to UA. Finally, as they walked into their classroom to find their teacher seemingly waiting for them at his desk. "Excellent job on your internships, but that doesn't mean that you can do hero work now. All that means is that you have gained the experience of what it is like to be heroes on the street. As for some others, we will be using our summer break in order to do something for all of you students. As a reward for keeping yourselves safe from each and every villain attack this year, you all have been rewarded with a summer camp in order to dedicate your time to developing your quirks," Izuku said, as he finished his sermon. "Wow, getting to better our quirks sounds like an awesome idea," Kirishima said, as some other students mentioned that it would be fun. "Well, that is for those who managed to pass the final exams on both written and the practical exams. Those of you who didn't pass either one, are to spend your time doing remedial classes in order to catch you all up on what you missed for the exams. You will be spending that time with me, so keep your breaths short," Izuku said, smirking evilly at them. Once all the announcements were finished, Izuku made a new one that caused everyone to stare at him in trepidation. "Well, since all the announcements are complete, have you all collected your clothes and supplies needed for summer break?" the man asked, as everyone nodded their heads. "Well, good job, you made my job a lot easier. Get them and place them on the bus, we're heading to the summer camp today," Izuku said, as everyone rushed to get their bags. Izuku moved to the buses as he had his bag of clothes and cleaning supplies for himself as he boarded it. Sitting down near the back, he went to fall asleep, but apparently the world universe didn't wish for him to get any. When Okako sat next to him. "Hey Izuku, sorry about what I did this morning. I didn't think that you'd take the teasing that seriously," Okako said, looking at him sadly. It's fine. I just wasn't expecting it." Did you mean what you told me on the way here though?" Izuku asked, feeling a little excited for what she whispered to him. "Yup, don't tell the girls about it though, it will be our little secret," Okako said, as Izuku nodded and yawned. As he sleepily rubbed his eyes, Okako looked at him before making a so grunt as it caught his attention. Looking at her, she patted her lap as she blushed solely as Izuku blushed even more at the thought of a thigh pillow. Are you sure why you want me to do that?" Izuku asked. "I'm completely sure. Just get some rest, I know that you didn't sleep well last night," Okako said, as Izuku immediately fell on her lap and was out like a light. "Aw, he looks so adorable when he sleeps on your lap." Mina cooed, as Izuku slept in a small little ball. "I know, he did the same when he invited me and Tsu over to his house over the weekend. Although you should've seen his text to me," Okako said, as she pulled out her phone to show Mina. "Green power, hey, I'm home alone and I didn't wish to be all by myself tonight. My mother is in the health institution in order to keep her from hurting herself due to Alzheimer's disease. Gravity girl, do you want me to bring someone else or just for us to be all alone together?" Green power, whatever that means, I don't see care. Just I don't want to be alone tonight. Wow, he really sounded like a schoolgirl there in these texts. What was he like when you showed up?" Mina asked, cooing at the adorable factor. "Well, I didn't show up all by myself. Tsu showed up with me as we helped calm him down for the night. We all slept together though, although I really worry about his mind," Okako said, threading her fingers through his hair. "What do you mean?" Mina asked. "He was really adamant about using a condom that night, as if he was really wanting to stay safe," Okako said. "Did you use a condom?" Jiro asked, as she stared at the gravity girl. "Nope. It took about an hour of convincing since we had taken a pill. But we managed to get him to take it since it seemed to be hurting him more than helping him," Okako said, as Tsu showed up. "Yeah, that was what happened. Although he was worried that he sounded like a schoolgirl in heat when we showed up to his house. He even apologized for how he sounded in the texts, since he even thought he sounded like that himself ere it was sent," Tsu said, bluntly. With the whole class of girls staring at the two in shock. Before looking at Izuku's sleeping form, Jiro came up with the one question that was on their minds. "How big is he?" she asked, concerned but intrigued. "Well, that would ruin the fun of finding out, now, would it?" Okako asked, as she smirked at the girls. The ride was getting more and more bumpy as the class were nearing the summer camp location, as Okako was now sleeping on Izuku's shoulder. They had changed positions during the ride as Izuku woke up for a second before passing out once more against the window, as Okako fell asleep on him. He really didn't seem to mind it, as the girls then decided to take pictures of the duo as he slept like a baby. Within the next few minutes, the bus stopped as Izuku woke everyone up from their power naps in order to get them on the bus. As Izuku rubbed his eyes as he stood with the other girls, he looked around the place as he found the whole class inside the edge of a forest. Where are we?" Izuku asked, as Izuku spoke up. "You will all be meeting the People who allowed for UA to come here for training. You all can come. Out of hiding now. The teacher said, as a group of 4 had landed in front of them. Lock on with these sparkling daisies. A brown-haired woman called out. Landing in front of the group of kids. Stingingly cute and cat-like. A blonde-haired woman with blue eyes called out as well, standing next to the brown-haired woman. We've come to lend a paw and help. Another woman said, as she had long green hair with purple eyes. Coming out of nowhere. The last one said, who was a strikingly muscular and completely different from the others, male who seemed to not have a color for his eyes. The group landed in front of the class with their poses before they all spoke. Wild wild pussycats. As the group had sparkles as well as hearts coming from all around them, the students looked on with a slight sweat drop before Izuku spoke out in his fanboyism. Omigodites thuild wild pussycats, I love how they always ave people fro. Mdisisters. Izuku muttered out happily. Only he would be that happy. About heroes. Most of the class thought to themselves as Izuku nerded out about them. It's always good to know that we have a few fans. The leader of the group said, with a smile. Wow, all these little kittens look so adorable. Especially the green-haired one. The blonde-haired woman said, as she stared at Izuku licking her lips. Omigodites Pixie Bob, she has been around for 12 years of people. Izuku muttered even more, causing the woman to yell at him. I am 20 at heart, she said, pulling at his cheeks. She had this malicious aura about her as she was pissed. He mentioned her age. Sorry. I didn't mean to mention that, Izuku said, waving his hands around as the woman continued to spread his cheeks. Mandalay, are the traps in place for the class to learn for today? Izawa-sensei asked, as he looked at the leader. Yes, Izawa-kun. Everything is prepared for the kittens to train at our facility. Now, in order for you all to be able to eat dinner tonight, you will all have to run through the forest to get to that location in the distance. It should take you all 4 hours approximately in order to arrive before noon. See you all there, Mandalay said, as she looked at her subordinate. You got it, boss? The green-haired girl said. Once all the students noticed the look on the teacher's face, they all ran towards the bus in order to get to safety, but unlike all of them, Izuku had ran towards the edge in order to get a head start on the class. As much as he wanted to be a team with them, he wanted to get there first to start his training on his own. With the rest of the class now about 50 meters behind him, he began running through the forest with impressive speed as he took out some dirt golems along the way. The green-haired boy is impressively energetic. What did he do before waking up from his power nap? Mandalay asked. He awakened his quirk during the sports festival. I want him to train Midoriya so that he can increase his power from what he is as of right now to be better than when he won the sports festival, Izawa said, as he looked at the tiger-looking man. Well, let Tiger increase his power as well as base strength. He is the strongest of us all, Pixie Bob said, as she smiled at the man. It would be my pleasure to teach the young kitten everything I know, Tiger said, as he gained a massive aura that was that of a teacher.